It's nice to meet you, Vince.
What's going on?
Come on, man. Bryan Jackson, the head coach over here at Texas A&M-Corpus Christi. I've made my way around the country from different assistant coaching positions, from little old Wofford College over in South Carolina to Texas State to Pitt to Orlando at UCF, and now finally settling down over here in Corpus as a head coach. But looking forward to catching up with you guys.
Yeah,
And Vince, you
yeah.
probably remember an athlete I coached who transferred up to Tech after I left. You kicked his butt you guys were kicking his butt in training. Alex Alfredo.
My boy Alec. My boy
Yeah.
Alec. That's a hard worker right there. That's a hard worker
Yeah.
right there, man.
He wasn't that hard of a worker when I first got him. I had to ingrain that in him at Texas State.
Hard worker.
Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. So like I said, we're not gonna take up too much of your time, man. Like 20 to 30 minutes. I'm gonna ask you a few questions. Vince was gonna ask you a few questions and kind of just spitball it from there. I guess the first question for me that I had was, what was your journey of becoming a college coach and um, just to getting where you at right now, like just some small steps that got you to where you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just putting in the time, putting my head down and putting in the time, and just I started out at my alma mater as a volunteer coach for 2 years, Bowling Green State University, and then was fortunate at the age of 26, fortunate or just naive enough to be the only one crazy enough to take the job. But at the age of 26, I became the youngest Division I head coach in the country at Wofford College.
See, I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a school of 1,400 students. They were Division I. And I think I was the only one crazy enough to take the job because it was cross country, indoor, and outdoor track, all 6 sports, both genders. Only coach, I had no salary pool for assistants. I was the only one. Budget was like $35,000 for everything, right? Like everything, travel,
30,
gear,
you said how much?
$35,000
Okay.
for everything.
That's crazy.
So like I was like
That's indoor and outdoor.
everything, cross
And
country, indoor
cross.
and outdoor.
Yeah.
Recruiting budget, everything. I was fundraising, like, man, I think I was only crazy enough to take that job with that amount of resources. But it taught me a lot about how to like do as much as you can and give the kids the biggest experience you can with little bit of resources. And then I was fortunate enough to Coach Boone was hired at Texas State University as I wrapped up my 3rd year there at Wofford College, and we had a mutual acquaintance. And he kind of pushed my name onto her list, and I was fortunate enough to be hired to be her distance coach and one of her assistants at Texas State, and I was there with her for 4 years. And then when she went to Texas Tech, where you guys crossed paths with her, I went to the University of Pittsburgh for 3 years. And then when she was offered the job at UCF, I was her first phone call.
Nice.
She called me before
That's
about
great.
3 weeks before that became public knowledge, and asked if I wanted to join her on the staff if she accepted the job, and and come down here and help her build championships. And to me that was a no brainer because Coach Boone is the GOAT. She's the
Yeah.
greatest. And
Yeah.
so that was a no brainer to team back up with her and continue to learn from her for a couple more years before finally becoming the head coach here at Corpus Christi.
Yeah. That's what's up. Like what I'm hearing is that you formed like a lot of connections, and with those connections that you formed, you made it known that you are a workhorse and you wanted to get to where you are now. And I'm pretty sure you got bigger goals than where you are now in the long term. But far as where you are right now, uh, you just kept your head down and showed your worth.
Yeah. No, I mean, spot on. Um, I think networking is everything for those young coaches that want to get into the business. Like, networking is everything. That's how you get your jobs early on. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
Yeah.
And then showing them that they can put their name on the line to help you get a job.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing is people being willing to pick up the phone and tell somebody, hey, hire this guy, and vouching for him.
So
How
going
did
off
you?
that, like
Go ahead, B.
Sorry. Going off that, me and CJ are both high school coaches, wanting to be college coaches. Is there any other advice you would give us or someone else who's trying to be a college coach or a high school coach or a professional coach going into it? Is there something that we should know, that we should do already? Is there anything else? Yes.
Yeah, I think, you and I are going to have different paths, I think, because I think, I was not an All-American. I was not a professional athlete. And I think that right there puts you a little bit at a higher, I think, level to have your name out there, because like when you call recruits, you have that on your resume that you're recruiting off of, like, and I think so that's going to definitely help you guys get into the college game. I would say don't spend too long high school coaching. There are phenomenal high school coaches out there. There are some of the best coaches in the country that are coaching at the high school level. So I'm not saying this to knock that, but for some reason, there becomes this perception of like, oh, they're just a high school coach. And it even happens in like, oh, they're just a Division II coach, or they're a Division III coach, or they're an NAIA coach. And then like it becomes harder for like that head coach to like bring you into the college game, because they just create this perception, and it's not a true perception, but perception is people's reality, unfortunately. And so on top of networking, it's like just get to the level you want to be and just hustle and grind and put in the time, and be willing to do everything,
Yeah.
And I always call like, you got to be, and this is one thing I learned from one of my old coaches and who I got to work for at the University of Pittsburgh, Coach Webb, is like how to be a servant leader, right? Like even as a leader, like just being willing to do everything and be down in the weeds and just do it all,
Yeah.
But showing those people that you're willing to do that, is huge.
Yeah, I think that's real. I think honestly, I think our coach Tom Brumlick is a pretty good example of a servant leader. I think he goes above and beyond for pretty much each one of his athletes, no matter what it is, whether it's getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go put cones around the field for us, or
Yeah.
driving to the store to go get us lunch, blah 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 blah, or getting up at 5 a.m. to take us to the airport, like from the meet to get us so we can get back to get rest, blah blah, X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? I think that's
Yeah.
a good just a good example of being a great coach. If you want to be a great head coach as well, just being that servant leader. I think it also just brings about like that family vibe for athletes. I think for athletes to be successful, most athletes to be successful, they have to feel some type of connection to whoever's coaching them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think
100%.
being that servant leader is one of the top examples of uh building that connection, because once an athlete sees that, okay, this coach believes in me, or this coach will do this for me, it's like, okay, I'm able to go past this certain line for my coach. You know what I mean? um I think that's a great example of becoming who you need to be far as a coach. I also told Vince this as well, like kind of like what you were hinting at, far as like high school coaching and like the Division II route or blah blah blah. Like I personally, I want to try to skip that much as possible. Uh, Not because I'm not interested in it. It's just because like I know what I bring to the game, and I know what I can do and what I can produce. And also, I just don't want to get stuck into a route. One of my biggest problems is my loyalty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've been at this high school that I coach at right now for like 6 years, and this is my sixth season, and I didn't plan on being here nowhere near this long. But
Yeah.
just the kids and the connections that I've built with the kids over time have pushed me towards like, oh, I got one more year for y'all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I don't want to get into that type of place. But yeah, I get you head on. For kids that aren't all Americans like me and Vince, what would you say to them? Like that came from your situation and
Yeah.
like they
Mhm.
weren't
No, I
really
think
good
you
and
got
want to
you got to
be.
be willing to put in your time. I think I got I got to that first paid position, and it turned out to be a head coaching position, even though it was at Wofford College of 1,400 students. I got to that because, when I was a volunteer assistant coach, I was just willing to like be in the office all day long, help in any way, shape, or form. Like I was at the distance practice in the morning, and then I went out and I wanted to learn from the sprint coach. So I was shadowing him at the sprints practice. And then I was like, oh, I want to learn strength and conditioning. So I went with a throws coach and had him traditionally teach me how to Olympic lift, right? So I knew these concepts, right? And like I just dedicated 2 years of my life while not getting paid to doing everything I could to know the craft. And it got me to the point where like we were hosting the MAC championships, the outdoor championships at Bowling Green. And my boss didn't want to be bothered with being the meet director. And who did she name as the meet director? The volunteer assistant coach myself, right? At
Yeah.
24 years old, right? And so I got to stand in front of the room of head coaches at the MAC head coaches meeting and
Yeah.
address all the coaches as the 24-year-old volunteer assistant coach. And I got to put on display like leadership abilities and my ability to kind of like, control the room kind of thing, And so I think that instantly showed all these other head coaches in the conference, oh, this is a guy that's going to have a career in this, and
Yeah.
being willing to take on everything and just do it and not being worried about what you're going to get out of it, but do it because it's going to better the program you're volunteering at. And if you do that enough, people are going to take notice and it's going to also benefit you in the long term. And it might take 2 years. It might take 3 years. I know guys and gals that have had to volunteer for 4 or 5 years before they catch that break. You know, and so,
Yeah.
it's just putting your time in, putting your head down, controlling what you can control, getting to the convention, meeting as many people as you can, and then doing that, you'll get that break eventually.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like you're a great coach and you know how to get through like hard obstacles and like nothing can get in your way. So during COVID season, how was that for you guys? And how did you pretty much get over that obstacle of still working out or, did you have
Yeah.
to run inside with masks and all that fun stuff? How'd that
Yeah.
go?
I thought that was going to be the end of my career. Like I was preparing for college athletics to not exist after COVID. Like I was like, schools are going to go bankrupt. They're going to cut athletic departments. I was Uber Eating and Door Dashing, trying to make money on the side to make sure like I could provide for my family.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing was like, while I was doing all that stuff to make sure like my personal family was taken care of financially, like I was scheduling weekly Zoom calls with the athletes just to stay engaged with them. And it wasn't about the training at that point. It was just about like their mental well-being as they're going through this pandemic, right? Something none of us ever imagined happening. And just staying engaged with them. And I think through me doing something to keep them engaged, it kept me engaged and it kept me sane as well through that whole process. And then I think the biggest thing we talked about when we all got back to campus as a team that fall is like never taking anything for granted ever again. Right. Like
Yeah.
we literally had our first cross country season and we were in the team huddle and I'm talking to the young women before we go take the line and I'm just crying. Right. Because I'm like so happy to be back doing what I love. And the girls all start crying. And it was like, you just realize like you don't know what you got until you lose it, right? And like something was taken from us. And from that point on, like my message to my team every single day, every single time we meet as a team is like, we're never taking anything for granted, right?
I love that.
You know,
That's real.
So
That's
what would
real.
be the biggest thing you learned so far of being a coach? Because you've been a coach at a lot of schools for a lot of years. What is the biggest thing you think you learned over the past? I mean, you've been coaching for sounds like over 10 years. What is the
yeah.
biggest thing you've
I think
learned?
this is year 16.
Yeah.
Don't let the baby face fool you. The biggest thing I learned. Um,
It can be from your athletes, it can be just from coaching in general,
yeah, I think the
peers.
biggest thing I've just learned from coaching in general is like it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmys and the Joes, right? You
Yeah.
know, like recruiting, our job at the college level is 80% recruiting. Like you're not Texas Tech won a national talent because the talent they had on that team, right?
Yeah.
And the coaches didn't screw it up, kind of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like it's having the athletes in place. And so like I think as a young coach, I was like trying to make sure I had the perfect training, right? And I think it's always good to like continue to like learn and always be getting bettering yourself as a coach
Yeah.
and increasing your knowledge, but also just remembering that like you could be the world's most knowledgeable, greatest coach in the world. And if you don't have the athletes,
Yeah.
no one's ever going to see it or know it, and so
Yeah.
I think from like a building a team and a running a program type of thing, that's one of the biggest things I learned. And then the more on like, on my own personal development, the biggest thing I learned was like, and how do I say this? I think I put a lot of my early on as a coach, I put a lot of my self-worth as a coach in the results of the athletes and like
Yeah.
how fast
Yeah.
they ran. And that made me a terrible coach because when they didn't run fast, like it made me feel like I wasn't worthy as a coach and I
Yeah.
wasn't worthy. Right. And like, I think that's such a dangerous place to be in because then you're not coaching them. It's all about you. Right. It's
Yeah.
all about you feeling good and you wanting to feel like you're worthy. And so I
Yep.
think it's like, I love what I do. I love coaching, but that's not all of who I am anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I think as a
Yeah.
young coach, I was making that all of my whole self-worth was tied to that. I think
Yeah.
athletes need to hear that same message. Like
Nah, I was just literally,
you gotta
yeah.
love being a professional athlete, guys. But
Yeah.
like you gotta love you more than that. You gotta
Yeah.
love CJ more than that. You gotta love Vince more than that. I love me more than I love Coach Jackson. I love
Yeah.
being Coach Jackson, but I love me more than that.
Yeah.
My worth isn't tied to that. And so it allowed me to step back and become a better coach because now you start coaching for the right reasons. And that's to
Yeah.
invest in young people, give them the experience that they deserve, help them develop and chase their dreams and their passions.
Yeah.
But it's not about me anymore. It's about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's good, man. I had to tell myself that a couple, like probably like 3 years ago, man, when I was kind of uh thinking about putting the sport down. You know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah.
like too much of my happiness tied into the sport.
Tied to
You
the
know what
game.
I mean?
100%.
Like what was the like whatever the results was basically affected my moods, affected
Mhm.
how I went about things, how I carried myself through the day, blah, 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 blah. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And once you get to that place, it's hard to get the results you want in general
Oh,
because now you're overthinking it, you're over pressing the situation,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like you over analyzing everything. And what you just said, for me, like when I'm coaching, like I could care less about how like I want all my athletes. Let me say this: all my athletes, any kid I've coached has gotten tenfold better
Right.
while I'm coaching them. But beyond that, I could care less about the results of the kids. I'm like, what kind of kid are you going to become when you leave me? Are you going to be a better person? Are you going to be um, a better child, a better adult when you get older?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what are you learning from me after you leave? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's bigger than track and field, especially with kids, man. And when you dealing with young adults, they from college to becoming an adult is a huge step. You know what I mean? So it's like, what am I teaching you beyond track and field? The track and field is the easy part. In my personal opinion, being a coach and getting results, that's the easy part. I can get a kid to run faster. That's not a
Yeah.
problem. I can get a kid to do whatever. You know what I mean? What kind of character am I building? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I got a thing with my kids. It's like, we can't say can't. Like if you say
Yeah.
can't, we all the whole group. No, I don't care who you are. You could be hurt. The whole group has 10 push-ups, including
Right.
myself. If we say the
Yeah.
words, the C word, you know what I mean? Because it's just a
Yeah.
mentality. I want us to believe that we could do anything at all times. So I definitely commend you on that, and that's a super valuable thing for coaches and athletes, man. Don't uh like he said, overvalue yourself as a coach. Put more love into yourself over being the
Yeah.
athlete or being the coach first and foremost. I guess we could ask one more question, man. I'm gonna let you get out of here because we don't want to take up too much more of your time. Vince, you want to ask anything?
I mean, I got a lot of questions, man. I always got a lot of questions, especially
Yeah,
talking to veteran coaches. Like, I mean, I want to know your favorite workouts, your favorite athletes, all this fun stuff. I mean, like I said, you've been coaching for 15 plus years. There's so much things we can learn from you. Sorry, we don't have too much time, but like I said, your
We can
favorite
do
athlete
follow up
or
calls. We always do follow up
yeah,
calls. I'm always
yeah,
here to pick. I'm not shy about talking track and field. So We can
Oh, for
have
sure.
follow-up calls for sure.
Well, I know you said you found like you've been coaching for 15 plus years. Like, I don't even want a broad topic of what's the recipe you have for coaching a distance program let's go from fall to the end of outdoor season.
Yeah. I think my recipe is really tied in, like, take the next logical step, right? Like, we're coaching individuals. We're not coaching the 800. We're not coaching the 5K. I'm not coaching the 10K. I'm coaching, a young man or a young woman, and we need to take the next logical step in their development, right? And so I'm a big believer in, no matter what the event is that I'm preparing that athlete for, there's obviously event demands, right? There's the demands of the 800 that you have to be prepared for, and those are different than the demands of the 5K. But how each individual prepares for those events is very different, right? And so, I'll go back to a story at Texas State. My last year at Texas State, Alec was number 2 in our conference. I had another young man, DeQuad Bender, who went on to run 148 and, missed nationals by this much. He won our conference. They rarely trained together all year, right? One of them was a 46-second guy. One of them could barely break 50 seconds in the 400. We had to do different. The recipe for both of them had to be different, but you had to take the next logical step for the athlete, right? And so I look at training as like, I want to improve every athlete I'm coaching from their speed, right? From their all out, like their actual speed, to their endurance, like, and everything in between. Like, so they're slow, like easy aerobic running pace, to their tempo runs, to those 3K, 5K race paces, 1,500-meter, 800-meter race paces, and then that speed endurance work. I want every athlete I coach to improve along the entire spectrum of training, right? And how I balance all of that training is really dependent on the athlete. The athlete is the balance point, right? And so some athletes, you need to load them up more with the speed and just supplement the endurance and the strength work. Some athletes need to just be supplementing with some speed work and a lot of work on the aerobic side of things, right? And so I really look at, like, every athlete I coach, they're the balancing point of my scale, right? What do they bring to the table, and how do I need to balance the training for them, and what's the next logical step in doing that?
Yeah. But with like for high school kids or a high school coach, usually like when a high school coach, some coaches coach from the 400 up to the 2 mile.
Yeah.
So what do you have any advice for high school students going into trying to go to college level, or any high school coaches that want to, coach at the next step? Do you have any advice for them?
You like high school coaches who want to go to that next level?
Yeah, or high school students that want to get into the next level. Like, doesn't even have to be a bigger
Gotcha.
school. Like, just running college in general. I know a lot of high
Yeah.
school kids have a lot of questions they want to ask. Me and CJ alone, we went to a couple of high schools and talked to kids. They have so many questions, but they would love to hear, the answer from a college coach.
Yeah, no, I think the best advice I could give a high schooler is, whatever situation you're in, trust your coach, trust the process, and then just work. And just work, put your head down and work. I think regardless of doing the right stuff or this or that, like, work wins at the high school level. Like, if you're going to outwork your competition, you're going to win more times than not. And so just kind of put your head down and work. And when you, and if you have a great coach, that work is going to take you far. And if you have a coach that maybe's, the football coach who's just coming out there, like, when you get to the college level, you'll have learned to work, and you'll get the right work to be put behind that work ethic, and then you'll really take off, So I would just tell kids at the high school level, just work, learn how to work. Because that's the most frustrating thing as a college coach. I have to teach someone how to work, It's like, you should know how to work,
That's a good. We could finish off on this one. When you're recruiting, how do you differentiate? Okay, I got it. I'm talking to this kid, but I'm just kind of trying to sense out, like, okay, this kid's a hard worker, this kid's not. Like, how do you, like, for me, I feel like I have great intuition when it comes to that. Like, I can see a kid and be like, nah, that kid not it, or that kid got some dog in him. That kid's gonna, you know what I mean?
No,
Like, how do you
I think you hit the nail on the head, is like developing a great, like, radar for that, like an intuition for that, like knowing how to ask the right questions. And I also believe, like, workers work, right? Like, so
Yeah.
their grades are normally going to be good because they work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier to get good grades in high school if you just work hard at it. Like, you don't have to have a massive high IQ to get good grades in high school if you're going to work hard. Now,
Yeah.
guys with huge SAT scores can get good grades and be lazy, right? But if you have a guy
Yeah.
that's got a lower SAT score, but they're getting 4.0s, you're like, that's a worker. Like, I know he's
Yeah.
working. So
Yeah.
sometimes looking at that SAT to GPA ratio, but then also like you said, just that intuition of kind of like knowing kind of just having a sense about them. And then even if high school coaches tell you they work, sometimes looking in that high school coach's eye, you can kind of tell if he's how genuine he's being when he's telling
Yeah.
you that it's a worker or not, you know?
Yeah. 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 That's good stuff. Last thing for the kids, do you pay attention to social media at all?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Okay.
Like you're creating your brand on social media. So
Yeah.
don't these young people need to not be fooled. The things you like and the things you post tell me who you are, right?
Yeah.
And I want to surround
Yeah.
myself with a certain type of person. And so I'm going to
Yep.
use that because everyone's going to sit in my office and tell me what I want to hear. I got to figure out the truth. You
Yeah.
Do you
know,
just go on Instagram or do you go on Facebook, Twitter? Like you look them wherever they at,
I'm
TikTok, all that.
I don't have TikTok. I'm too old for that. So I don't get on TikTok. I'm not on Snapchat. But if they're on Instagram, I'll find them, and I'm gonna see the things they're liking, the things they're posting, and it's gonna tell me who they are, right? Like if you don't have one picture of track and field on there, how into it are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can also
I
tell
got
those
it.
kids that are fake and they're just doing it for the likes, Like I also don't want that kid that's just posting his workout just for the gram. And so like you got to find that balance of like, you know, the right kid and the genuine kid, you know.
I got so many questions, man. It's like
Fire
when you
away. I
go
got a
in
couple of
there,
minutes.
like when you're recruiting, do you just look at their times? Like, okay, they ran this time. Because some kids, they think if I put the time out there, it is. Or do you look off potential? Do you look off height? Do you look off? I remember my coach was telling me he looks at when he was recruiting, he looked at where people was from. He was like, well, if you can run a 10 flat in Colorado, it's different than running 10 flat in Texas. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? Like,
100%.
like,
1,000%.
do
Yeah.
you also look where people are from, if they're from a colder
Oh,
place or warmer place, all
yeah.
that fun stuff?
If you run 10 flat in Michigan, like that means a lot more than 10 flat in Texas because you're training outdoors for like 2 months, like
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
absolutely. It matters where you do it.
Yeah.
If you're just recruiting the numbers, you're going to fail more than 50% of the time,
Okay.
and you got to know there's development in that kid's future because most kids aren't coming out of high school ready to like score at the NCAA meet. 98% of them are not.
Yeah. I
So,
was just about to say that.
but that
Literally,
doesn't mean
probably
none of them
none.
are going to score at the NCAA meet.
Every blue
You just
moon.
got to
Yeah.
find the ones that will, right? And find the ones that have that development and have that work ethic and have the it factor, And so it's building the relationship, getting to know them, understanding like their training history. I think there was a study done, like some kind of study or something done that like a certain percentage of Olympians were in the Olympics in their second sport. So it's
Man,
like it's
That's
not the kids
crazy.
that start running at 8 years old that are going to be the ones in the Olympics one day. It's that football player, basketball player, soccer player who that sport doesn't work out for them, and then they realize their passion is running later on in life. That's typically going to be the elite athlete. And so I usually look, what other sports do they do? How well rounded and athletic are they? It's the whole picture. It's not just numbers. I'll offer a kid I have recruiting standards, but I always tell people they're loose. Don't assume just because you hit this time, I'm offering you this amount just because it says it on a piece of paper. If I don't believe, I don't like the future I see ahead of you.
Yep. Yep.
so pretty much
That is
encouraging other
fair.
high schoolers to play other sports, or what if they ran cross country, indoor and outdoor, like pretty much their whole life? Would you like encourage them to do other sports as well?
Yeah, I think it becomes hard like when they get to like sophomore year of high school, like, oh yeah, now go try to play soccer. So I think it's at that point, it's kind of like the ship has kind of sailed on that. But just being well rounded, and I do like to see kids that have come from other sports, come from team sports sometimes, because sometimes those kids have
Mm.
never played a team sport. They just think of cross country and running is just such an individual thing that like it's hard to get them to be a great team player as well. And so I do like kids that have an experience from team sports as well. But some of that's like getting that message out to parents, like stop individualizing your kids at 8 years old. Let them do other stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. Well, we thank you. This is great. This is very informational. I think a lot of people could
Man,
take
I
a
wish we
lot
had more
from this.
time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I wish we did too. 5 minutes left, but we thank you, man. It was great. It was great to talk to you. I'm glad.